Ladies and gentlemen, darts fans joining us around the world. This is the moment that you've all been waiting for. This is the 200th episode, the weekly Dartcast, introducing our co-hosts. About to toe the hockey. Firstly, to make his way to the stage from England, it's the Zulu, Alex Moss. And now to make his way to the stage, all the way from the United States of America, introducing the Stat Attack, Burton, DeWitt.
Hello and welcome to the weekly Dartscast, episode 200. We've made it. It's the double century. I'm Alex Moss, and joining me, as he has done ever since episode 1, it is my co-host, Burton DeWitt. How are you doing?
I'm doing just fantastic. How are you, Alex?
I'm the same as well, doing very well. Great to hit this milestone for the show, and we've got a lot lined up for you guys to celebrate it. We've got a few guests coming up that you'll know about because you'll have seen the description of the show, but we'll start things off like we did for our 100th episode, looking back at what had happened in darts during our first 100 episodes. So let's look back at the 100 since then, 101 to this now 200. A lot's happened since 2019. What have you made of what's gone on in the world of darts in the last 2 years?
Well, the biggest story, I should say, is the one that we've talked a lot about over the last year, and particularly the last few months, and that's the downfall of sorts of Michael Van Gerwen. Because when we started the show, you go back before episode 1, he was at his peak. He was not just the world number 1, but he was a mile ahead of everyone else, even though the rankings didn't necessarily show it, because Gary Anderson had won a couple world titles, so there was a bit closer than reality might have said. But Michael Van Gerwen was unquestionably the best player in the world. Now he's arguably not even in current form in the top 10, although what we saw from the Premier League this past week definitely starts to show that he's rebounding back. And I think you have to start there, because he's not world number 1. He's not world number 2. He holds only one of the real major titles right now, and that's the Players' Championship final from last year. That's unheard of for him, when back in the past he was holding all of them. Beyond that, I think the big stories on the opposite end, the demise of the BDO. We recorded our test episode either right in the middle of the 2017 BDO World Championships or right after. I can't recall which one we did our test episode. And I think I said in episode 100. I was just in a cafe for that one because it was just a test episode. And a table or two over from me was someone who looked like Magnus Karras. So Magnus Karras' doppelganger. Never saw him again at the cafe or anywhere else. But that was during, the BDO World Championships, and those are no more. Who knows? The BDO says it's still around, but I don't think we'll ever see another BDO World Championships, and that's where our show got its start. That's how we pulled together our first practice episode, and eventually our first episode was not long thereafter. And now, I don't know. And then you throw the pandemic in. It's been a weird 5 years or 4.5 years, and it's just gotten weirder as things gone on. But there's been a lot of good as well. I focused on some of the negatives, but we've seen the emergence of Nathan Aspinall. We've seen the emergence of Christopher Tyskie. We've seen the emergence of Jose de Sousa, and I could keep going. For every player who has fallen down over the last 5 years, there's been plenty more who've come up who no one had ever heard of when we started on episode 1, let alone would have thought would be a major champion by now, would be a top 15, top 20 player. So I think, a lot has happened. It's an understatement. Everything's happened, and it's only been 4.5 years.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And we put out that 100th episode. I had a look back earlier today, April 2019, and we're in the midst of a Premier League season, just like we are now at the moment. And back then, 2 years ago, it was Michael Van Gerwen challenging for top spot with Rob Cross. That year, we had a lot of Rob Cross appreciation minutes. He became a 2-hit wonder, then a 3-hit wonder. But yeah, it's been a little over 2 years since that episode, and as you say, you've touched on a few bits there. A lot's gone on, and I'll start with the BDO folding essentially. I know they've still got a few events lined up for next year in Torremolinos and Cyprus, but aside from that, when we're talking the BDO in its heyday with the World Championship, the World Masters and everything else that came with it, that is sadly no longer here, and it's one of the longest running organisations in darts. to my knowledge, we were the only media there for that now infamous day, October 23rd, 2019, the Grey Civic Hall, the oldest major in world darts, the World Masters, descending into chaos. We had that redraw and everything that went on that week. When you look back at it now, it's been a little while now, but it was, I guess, the beginning of the end for the BDO. 3 months later, we had what was the last World Championships, start of 2020 for the BDO. At the O2, Wayne Warren, at the age of 57, becoming the oldest winner of the tournament, but only picking up £23,000 for winning that title, the lowest winning check for that tournament since the 1980s. So sadly, yeah, the BDO is no more. But as you mentioned with the pandemic, there's organisations, they want to take over that space that the BDO has left. You've got the WDF, the UKDA, MAD, that all want to get involved and push darts forward, that grassroots level of the game, if you like. And we're just waiting, aren't we, for the word go. Even at a more local level, like your local opens, it is now waiting for this pandemic to pass and restrictions to ease, and we can really see darts at all levels start to thrive. Because yes, we have had the PDC that has kept going during the pandemic, and you've got to say it's been the success that they've had over the last 10 or 15 years. The move to the Alexandra Palace for the World Championship, the bigger crowds, they've built up that pot, the finances, if you like, to take the hit with all these behind closed doors events they've had on. But yeah, last 2 years, a lot's gone on, and we were at one point thinking of changing the name of the show to the fortnightly Dartscast during the early months of the pandemic when there was literally nothing going on. But soon enough, we've got darts coming back, and I think second half of the year is going to be a lot of darts going on, fingers crossed. So we'll keep the name Weekly Dartscast.
Yes, we will. Now, Dave Clark got the nod from our listeners back in January as our guest of the year for our first ever award show covering season 2020. Who have been your favorite guests, though? We'll go back all the way to episode 1 through now.
Dave was a well-deserved winner, I've got to say, but it's a really tough one to answer, isn't it? Because we have been very fortunate over the 4 years that we've been doing this show. We're now into our 5th year, but we've had so many different people give up their time to have a chat with us, whether that be players right at the top of the game. The last couple of years, we've had the world champion, the PDC world champion on after they've won the world title the following day. Going Price this year, Peter Wright last year. Figures at the top of the PDC, Barry Hearn, Matt Porter, and then you look at other areas of the game, the players in the BDO, lower down the PDC rankings, the ladies players, youth players, legends, officials, referees. But I only come back to one name, and that is Co Stompy. I mean, we were very lucky to finally get him on the show last year. I've been trying for a long time to have a chat with him, probably going back to my uni days when I was doing my journalism degree and we had to do different assignments and stuff, and we never managed to sort a time, but I'm really glad we did eventually get him. I did mention Peter Wright a day after he won the World Championship. Listeners will know how much of a Peter Wright fan I've been for a long time, so to chat with him the day after he achieved that was brilliant. But there's been so many, and I've got to say, really, when we started this show, start of 2017, there weren't many people doing this sort of thing, chatting to players lower down the rankings and different people involved. Now you fast forward to today and the space is filled up a lot more, and which is great for darts and great for the fans that are following the sport, great for new fans coming into the game because they can learn about all these different players. So long may that continue. Another one I'll give a mention to as well, I've got to mention him, John O'Shea at the World Masters, that final day at the Circus Tavern that night, that Sunday night when he beat Scott Waits to win the title. And we spoke about it in the last question. It was a tough week to start things off with that redraw, but at the end of the week, seeing him lift that title, it was a very special moment. So to get a few words with him was really good. But there's been so many, and I'm sure our listeners will get in touch with us and let us know who they've enjoyed. But yeah, every time anyone gives us a chance to have a chat with them, we always look forward to it.
Yes, indeed. And there's been so many interesting, or at least I hope to you guys interesting, but at least to us interesting interviews we've had over 200 episodes. But I want to focus on some from right near the beginning. I think one of our first episodes, we had John Part on right after he had won back his tour card at Q School. And he was not just one of the first big names we had on our show, one of the first people we had on the show. And it was really fun to be able to interview him and to have him on that early on in our history. And then shortly thereafter, maybe a month or so, we had our first top 16 player. At least I think our first was Ian White. I guess I should have verified that, but I recall when we got Ian White, it was our first time doing a top 16 player. But also we had some just really interesting ones. Darren Johnson, who I think we both said in the 100th episode is our favorite from the first 100, or among our favorites from the first 100, because he'd been around forever, but no one had interviewed him, so we didn't know anything about him as a person. We knew him on the dart tour, and he had just made his first final in the PDC the weekend before we got him on. But it was one of the most interesting interviews. Just I wasn't taking it out, Alex was, but just listening to it, I didn't want it to end. And I said on the 100th episode that I stopped sending notes in the middle of the interview about how much time was left, or I started lying about how much time was left just to keep it going, because I didn't want it to end. It was just that fascinating to hear from him. But, since then, in the more recent ones, I think my favorite, I'll go with Justin Pipe. We don't get that much, raw emotion and honesty, at least usually from players, especially not players who have been around for a while. But we got that from Justin, and credit to him for, he's not a player who likes to do that much media, but he was willing to take time out and tell us what he thought. And I thought it made for very interesting listening and very informative listening. Beyond that, some of my favorite sets of interviews, I would say, have just been the ones we've had from managers, because it is a different perspective, but we get to cover so much more ground and generally get to hear a different side of things. We've had Mac Alkin on a couple times. We've had Dean Moss on not that long ago. We've had a few other managers, and I've always enjoyed those interviews, whether Alex, you were doing them, or whether I was doing them, just because we get to cover so much more ground and get to hear a different side of things. So I'll throw all of those in there, because those are, I think, some of our better work we've done.
Some great choices there. Well, let's get into some interviews for this week's show then, and we're going to hear from two titans of the game. First, you're going to hear from the PDC president, Barry Hearn, and then you're going to hear from our long-time contributor and good friend of the show, Matthew Kiernan.
I'm joined today by Barry Hearn. Barry, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you very much.
And thank you for joining us as always. Now, only one place that we can start, and that's with the announcement last month that after almost 40 years, you've stepped aside from being in charge at Matchroom. What made you decide that now was the right time to hand over the reins?
I think, like everything else, you have to be honest with yourself. We've built a huge business with some great management that probably now need to go and do their own thing the way they want to do it rather than me. So I've been thinking about it, Burton, for a year or two. I'm 73 in June. I'm still fit. I think I'm still capable, but the clock's ticking, And in some way, when I first walked into darts and the PDC and Matchroom, that was the right time. Life's about timing. That was the right time to do that and get involved. And now's the right time to say to the youngsters, the people that are running the business, it's your time, and I'm still going to be involved as the president in terms of an advisory capacity, talking about event development and global extensions and expansion, which is what I enjoy and what I do well, I think. I can still make a contribution. But on the general operation side, it was time to pass the reins over to those more capable, and quite honestly, they are more capable. So I'm not too, my ego's big, as you know, but it's not too big to represent, to appreciate the truth of a situation. It's time, and I've had a great run. I've done a good shift. I've enjoyed every second. I'm still going to be involved, obviously, but not at the same level, and I'm sure it's in very capable hands going forward.
You founded Matchroom back in 1982, having a lot of success in snooker to begin with. Then in 2001, you became chairman of the PDC. What was the thing that persuaded you the most to get involved?
I just walked into the Circus Tavern one day and I saw a lot of mirror reflection of myself. I love the customers, I love the fans, I love the fact that they were getting involved, they were having a good time. It is a working man's sport. We can't ignore that, but it's actually classless as a sport. You can have bank managers sitting next to dockers, and why not? I think darts is a good message to the world, that we can all get on with each other in the right environment. And it's the job is to produce that right environment. I love the fact that the darts players themselves were, ordinary people, but they happened to have extraordinary ability. And I love the fact that we could finish the evening with everyone smiling and having had a good time, but being involved and enjoying world-class sport. So it ticked a lot of boxes for me. I felt at home, I think. And I think all the sports I've promoted over the last 40 or 50 years are sports that I felt at home in, and darts is right up there as possibly one of my greatest achievements, if you like, or my biggest contribution to how that sport has developed and become the global phenomenon it is and set to be even bigger over the next generation.
You mentioned darts being one of the ones you're most proud of. Of course, we go back 20 years ago when you took over the PDC to where it is now and how much it's grown. Back then, we were in the middle of the peak of the split, really. Took over the PDC. Did you have any main goals in hand? Or did you have a initial 20-year plan, or was it a shorter-term outlook?
Most of my plans are long-term, but I try to convince everyone I'm only interested in short-term because, you have to deliver as quickly as possible. And the players want more prize money. The fans want better events. The sponsors want more ratings. The TV companies want a bigger market share. And you start to work on that properly as soon as you have control, which is what I did 20 years ago. I mean, I thought I was confident that I could bring something to the table and we could make darts bigger than it was. I think the actual success of the darts and the way the various decisions and policies have been brought in have exceeded my expectation, and that whets my appetite to see how far we can really go, When you start off and your prize money is £500,000, it's a big chunk to double it to £1 million. But to take that to 15 million and to be looking now in the relatively short amount of time forward to make it 20 and who knows from there is very motivating and very exciting for me because it's a game. I play business in the same way as other people play darts. For me, business is a game and I want to win. I want to be the best I can be. And I need to have a plan, a long-term plan, which was always really to grow darts to the same level as golf and tennis and other sports because I don't see any reason why not. And if I don't see a reason why not, then the question is answered, isn't it? It's a question of how do you get there and how quickly do you get there. And we're on course for probably further advance than I thought we'd be 20 years ago. But now I've got I've got the appetite, and I've got the team, and I think the sport is such an exciting sport to watch and participate in, understandable by everybody. I really feel that we are at the threshold of a new global expansion that's going to take us to the next level. And again, as I say, I've got the right team in place to do it.
Back then in 2001, I was a little too young to follow darts as closely as I do now, but I was looking back, that first World Championship under your watch, you upped the total prize money and winner's prize so that it surpassed the BDO's prize money for their World Championship. Was that intentional to send out an early message that the PDC is going to be where players can earn a lot more?
Oh, of course. I mean, when I first got involved, it was in the middle of quite a bitter time, wasn't it, between BDO and PDC. And in fairness, I have to say it myself, I don't mind a fight. I like to win, as you know. But I did actually hold my hand out to the BDO at that time to say, let's sit down and talk and work something out. Communication is essential. But I was rebuffed and they were arrogant. And once the people are like that with me, then there's no rules, no holds barred. And one of my principal concerns was frankly to destroy them. And part of that message was let's boost the prize money to put them in their place, and then let's create more and more opportunities where they become an irrelevance, which is eventually what happened. I was sorry that we couldn't work something out, but the management in place at the BDO at the time were people that you just couldn't talk to in a sensible manner. And they had an arrogance that didn't sit well with me. And naturally, my first inclination is to deal with it, which I I did, and subsequently, as we've seen, the demise of the BDO, there was no reason for that demise. It was just mismanagement from the top and from the middle over an extended period of time, which meant that they weren't in a position to compete with the PDC, and we made far better operational decisions than they did. So they're now history and a lesson to be learned for everybody.
Now, we'll talk about some of those operational decisions. Obviously, we've mentioned the prize money increase, as well, of course, the Premier League, more recently the World Series, the European Tour. You also mentioned prize money going from £500,000 a year to over $15 million as the PDC has grown. Which of those achievements are you most proud of from the last 20 years?
Well, I think people will judge you by prize money and opportunity that you give. The essence of all sport, in my book, is that it should be as level a playing field as possible. There should be as few barriers to entry as possible. And players that are prepared to dedicate themselves should be rewarded as highly as possible for success. But it is, it's an industry, it's a sport that is governed by success, no favours, and I think that's probably the biggest achievement was the standard of play has improved so much. And it is a byproduct of increased prize money because players have become far more professional in their approach because of the rewards on offer. It's common sense more than anything else, isn't it? But it certainly works when you look at the averages we're seeing or have been seeing and compare the averages in the 80s and the 90s. It's another world, and the competition is probably the hardest it's ever been. There are players ranked outside the top 100 that can still beat you on their day, and that's good. That's very healthy. It keeps everyone on their toes. So prize money levels are essential before people take you seriously. When you go to a broadcaster or a sponsor, if you go there with a bad event that doesn't look particularly good, and the prize money's pretty, so what money, you don't get the respect. If you go to them, with a much more colourful picture, people want to be involved in a business that has momentum, And what we created with the PDC was a momentum business. Prize money going up, number of events going up, number of players, averages, standard of play, creative thinking on creating events, selling tickets beyond people's imagination, including mine. It's a difficult act to follow, and it's a difficult act to beat unless you're a really good operator. And, I've always been a good operator. 50 years experience in the sports business, you've got to learn something. And what I always learned was just blow it up big as you can, create opportunity, and people will join you on the journey, as indeed they have.
I watched an interview you did recently while at the Crucible, and you talked about the night Steve Davis, who you managed at the time, won his first world snooker title, and how special that moment was. Even 40 years on, it makes your hair stand up. Was there a moment in darts that compared to that, or you'd say was your Steve Davis moment?
Not really, not on a personal basis. Obviously, I had the pleasure of managing Phil Taylor, the greatest of all time, for about 12 years. And of course, I enjoyed some memorable moments with him winning world title after world title. But there is a difference when you've grown up with someone and you've shared the journey. I suppose if I'd have met Phil 20 years before, I'd have had the same experience in my mind and my heart that I had with Steve. But of course, Steve was special because it was from the beginning and a journey for both of us at a time of our life when, we needed that success to put our mark on a sport. In many ways, when I came into darts, my mark on sport had already been made. Yes, there was plenty of room for improvement, but it wasn't the same personal connection, so it's not really comparable.
And of course, sticking with snooker, just a couple weeks ago, the World Championships at the Crucible was one of the events selected to trial the return of fans, and you were there for the final, full capacity, as Mark Selby won his fourth world title. What's the feedback been like from having the crowd, and especially the capacity crowd?
Well, it's been amazing, Burton, and I think there's lessons to learn from it. in life, complacency is a sin, and sometimes we take things for granted. And things like sporting events, they happen every year. I suppose there's a certain element of we know with certainty we're going to see them each year. And when we lose something, that's the only time really we realise what we've been missing, which we may have taken for granted. So the Crucible was an atmosphere like I've never felt this year. And I think it was a mixture of relief and excitement, but also a welcome back to normality, to the world that we all want to live in. And, the pandemic has been the most difficult time of my life for 40-odd years. Certainly staging events, it's been fraught with problems. But it's also made me appreciative of what we had and makes me excited about getting it back. And that was the feeling of the Crucible. It was just like amazing. We're getting there. The light at the end of the tunnel is getting brighter. We're going to come out of this. It's been a war. It's been a struggle. It's been a disaster. But together, and not just with family, but together in sport, we can once again unite and enjoy the moments of greatness. And that was replicated also in the TV viewing figures, which were 50% up on the previous year, which is phenomenal. I mean, in this day and age of declining, linear traditional TV numbers, we buck the trend, and that sends out a good message that we can still attract huge numbers. And I'm sure that's going to apply to a lot of sports I deal with, in particular on darts. The excitement of having even a small crowd at Premier League darts in the next couple of weeks, everyone's talking about it. And we as a group are, having worked our way through the pandemic, been creative, had ideas ranging from darts at home to behind closed doors, try to make it as sexy as it can be, and it's been difficult. The players have responded. They've got us through it as well, so that's good. But all the talk now is about can't wait for the match play in July in Blackpool, full house, every day, darts as we remember it, as we love it, that we never want to lose. I think we want to make us appreciate it more, whether you're a live spectator or whether you're watching it on TV. So I'm excited for the future. It's been difficult, but in a strange way, very motivating to get through this crisis.
From your Twitter, we see since retiring, you've kept busy with a cricket bat in hand, 50 not out for East Hanningfield. Any chance of you opening the batting for England in the Ashes?
Well, I'll tell you what it does make me realise is you can't turn the clock back. But I'm very competitive, as you know. I'm competitive in business and in sport, just that I'm not particularly very good in sport. So I have to try really hard, and I also have to play at the appropriate level. So my batting exploits are very much reserved for East Hanningfield second 11 and also now the Essex over 70s second 11. So, the secret of being successful is to know your limitations. But I'm loving it. I'm loving participating. I'm loving having a little bit more time. I'm playing a couple of rounds of golf a week. I'm playing a couple of cricket matches. I can't move in the morning, you can imagine. I'm walk like a really old man, but I love sport. I love the competition element at whatever level you're comfortable to compete at, and that's the secret of real enjoyment. So I don't think you're going to see me on the TV playing, but I've got to tell you, I get excited every day. I'm doing something active, and I'm hoping that lasts for a long time.
Well, maybe the over 70s will be on television, because there are other senior events that are now starting up, most notably in darts. Modus and Jason Francis have launched the World Senior Championships for next year.
Yeah.
Phil Taylor, among other legends in the field. What are your thoughts?
I think it's a good idea. I think it's a natural progression. I don't think it's something that the PDC... I think we should be fairly neutral about it. It's not our event, but at the same time, I think it's anything that's good darts is for good darts, So, we have to wait and see how it develops, how the players are, what the performance is. But no, I'm looking forward to it with interest, and I always like new ideas. We'll see how it develops. it's a similar conversation to women's darts. You know, you have to open the door for everybody. You have to be totally inclusive and diverse, and events like that potentially can be good. Now, it comes down to the players now to be entertaining, and if they are, I think it's got a decent future.
Looking forward, you'll still be involved in Matchroom as president, focusing on group strategy and global expansion. Can you give us any insights into what you've got planned for the PDC?
Yeah, I mean, you know, we'll be announcing some new deals with new broadcasters going forward in the next few weeks, which are substantial deals, and it's going to have a long-term effect on the sport. You know, my connections and my reputation, I suppose my expertise, is in negotiating contracts at a level that other people perhaps can't do. And while I'm useful in that, I'm sure the incumbent board will be very happy with my strategy. But I think it's a little bit deeper than that. I think we've got to stretch out a little bit more globally in terms of localized events that build local heroes, which we can then convert into international heroes. Now, if that makes any sense to you, I hope it does. But you know, the principle is when you look at sports around the world, you know, there was no tennis in Germany before Boris Becker. There was no golf in Germany before Bernhard Langer, to speak of commercially. Local heroes created a massive business. And with darts and its appeal and its simplicity, I think there's a way we can get deeper involved, probably by streaming and sponsoring different countries' activities to grow the grassroots. You know, when you grow businesses, you can't just stare at beautiful flowers. You've got to feed the roots, because that's how the flowers are created. And sport is no different. So part of the strategy will be to look at our incumbent partners and ask a simple question. How can we do more that benefits your local aspect? And bear in mind, we're not a UK global sport. That's a big difference, because everyone says, oh, what are you doing for, I don't know, Tyne Tees or Sunderland or West Yorkshire? Yeah, we're looking at the world. So my question is, what are we doing with the Chinese government in China to enhance darts? What are we doing in South America to grow Brazil and Argentina, as well as other South American countries? That's an area that I have quite a lot of expertise in, that transcends normal operational aspects of my job, and coupled with the knowledge and the contacts with global broadcasters, both traditional and digital, then this is going to be, if you like, the platform for our next expansion.
And last and most importantly, your son Eddie Hearn has now taken over the reins at Matchroom, including the role of PDC chairman. We'll always be grateful for your time when you invited us to Ali Pally a few years ago. But do you reckon you can do one more favor for us and help us get Eddie on the show?
I think it's a certainty. I mean, the good news is, you know, we're always honest with each other, which is especially when you've got a very strong family relationship within a business. You know, you don't talk to each other as father and son. It's colleague to colleague in the business environment. But Eddie is a darts fan. That's the thing. You know, when you're in the professional business of running a promotional company, you have to have passion for the sports you promote. Otherwise, it comes across on the events themselves. You don't look so involved. And when we talked about my stepping to one side, he is obviously a natural successor. But more importantly, he has the same passion I have, and he loves his darts. So I think he's a darts podcast guest in the future. I think you'll be pleased with what he's going to bring to the table. And he has obviously his own view on digital exploitation, social media. He is probably one of the world's foremost promoters in that regime. He can bring a lot to the table, but underneath all of it, he loves his darts. He'll be okay, he'll do a good job, and he'll look after the players and grow the sport, I know, because the great thing about Eddie and I, we've always been very big competitors in everything we've done. He will want to outdo his dad, and the only way he can outdo me is by making the sport bigger, the prize money bigger, and the level of entertainment even better. And I know my son, he will not stop until he can have bragging rights over his dad on where we are in the world.
Yeah, well, best of luck to him and best of luck to you, and thanks for joining us as always.
Absolute pleasure, boys. Thanks for your time.
Hey, this is Connor Scott. Just want to say well done to the weekly Dartscast on reaching their 200th episode milestone. It's great news.
Joining us now on episode 200 of the weekly Dartscast, we have our regular contributor, sometimes guest co-host, Matthew Kiernan, the Darting Nerd. Thanks for joining us. How are you doing?
Yeah, really good, thanks, Alex. Episode 200. Brilliant stuff. Well done to you all.
Thanks very much. Yeah, we're still here, and we had you on for episode 100, looking back at how darts has changed from 2017 to 2019. Fair to say 2019 to 2021, a lot's gone on. We'll start off really with your highlights from the last couple of years following the sport.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to see how it's grown, really. And I think one aspect that we often forget is Dart Connect and the way that has transformed the game, really, for all of us. Following, no longer are we tapping F5 on the keyboard, desperately trying to get results through to us. Now it's just part and parcel of it, and we're sort of complaining when there's a server crash. So I think that's been fantastic to see. And obviously, my specialist subject and major interest is grassroots darts, and we've seen the BDO cease, although that's up for debate, isn't it? If you follow their page, the majors of the Northern Cyprus Open and Torremolinos Open are still going strong, it looks like. That's folded now. And then you've got this interesting new organisations coming through of UKDA and MAD, and what does that mean for the future? So that's been an interesting thing to see how that's developed. And of course, we've seen the renewed focus and the spotlight on women's darts as well, through what Fallon Sherrick achieved. It's not just her, of course, it's all of the women, the female darts players that have contributed towards that, and the PDC finally getting their act together. And we're not talking about walk-on girls, which did exist at episode 100. Of course, they don't exist now. We're not talking about them on stage. We're talking about actually women playing darts on stage. But yeah, so it's been interesting, really, the last couple of years.
One of the highlights I wanted to pick out, don't know whether you want to call it a good highlight or a bad highlight, but towards the end of 2019 we met at the Grey Civic Hall, day one of the World Masters that year. One of the most downloaded episodes that we've done actually on the show, the redraw, the chaos that happened that afternoon. What has stuck with you from that day?
That's amazing that it's one of the most downloaded, isn't it? I didn't realise that. Yeah, it was mental, wasn't it? So the two things that stick out to me and would contribute towards the Really Darts, one is driving Burton to the UK Open in 2019, and the other is this redraw madness that we couldn't quite believe what we were seeing at the final ever World Masters. Yeah, it stays in the memory. I don't think you and I could believe what was happening, really, and I think it was very sad, because for a lot of the players in that room, it was the highlight of their whole season. They'd all come over, as groups or as teams, and it's grassroots darts at its best to some extent, but not for them that day because of this enormous administration error, which basically meant that there were more players in the room than there were slots in the draw, and it meant that they had to do a redraw, and the moment which sticks out in everyone's mind and will stay with Des Jacqueline until the end of time is that he stood on the stage with a microphone saying there has to be a redraw. And it will always haunt him, and we couldn't believe it. And we just have to move on from that, really. But it will always haunt him, and I can't really believe, looking back, that's what happened, really.
Definitely, yeah. I think back to that day and think, why didn't I bring my darts with me to the venue? I might have been able to get in the redraw. But the landscape of darts, as you mentioned, is changed. The BDO has sadly gone, but we've got the WDF. They're making their plans. MAD, of course, the UKDA. During these COVID times that we're in at the moment, it's been difficult for them to get events on and get things rolling. But when we do come out of this pandemic, which is hopefully going to be sooner rather than later here in the UK at least, will darts be in a better shape, grassroots darts, than it was pre-pandemic? What are you thinking?
Well, I think it will be, yes. And I think, firstly, a lot of credit to the PDC for everything they've done over the last year during the pandemic. We certainly, appreciate their efforts. They haven't always got it right, it must be said, and this is why the weekly Dartscast needs to exist, because to call out mistakes from organisations when things don't go right. But they've got a lot of goodwill, and they've done very well, of course, the PDC. And I think that with the UKDA and the WDF and MAD, there are now fantastic, and of course England Darts and all the other devolved nations, some fantastic opportunities for darts players. And certainly looking at the Opens in my local area, which are sort of pre-registered, pre-booking, they've all sold out. So, there's definitely demand there. It's the leagues that we need to come back really in sort of September, October time. That's going to be the real thrust of it. That a lot of local venues rely on that. Super leagues and the general sort of Monday night team leagues of teams of 8 to come back, and so that's going to be the big test. I think it will be stronger. I think in relation to the sort of upper echelon of the quote-unquote amateur game with the UKDA, MAD and WDF, I mean, that is very complicated, isn't it? And I think that it's the waters are sort of muddied, really, because although they are clearly trying to work with one another, I think you may end up with situations of date clashes, and we've already seen that to some extent with an event which is going to be held in Chelsea by MAD, which clashes with a UKDA weekend. And those two organisations are meant to be, or what we were told, are working together. And there is a clash there already, so that's already caused some consternation. And I think there'll be more instances of that. And you may have to see players at the top end of the amateur game having to try and pick one or two or one body to focus on and just focus on that. And then does that make that more diluted? I don't know. I mean, it's on one level, it's really exciting because there's lots of choice for darts players to really make that sort of next leap up, potentially to the PDC. But on the other hand, is it too much choice? Is there a proliferation of events? Time will tell.
Definitely will be interesting to follow, and yourself, you're a big follower of grassroots darts. The last 12-15 months it must have been difficult, really, not being a lot of events. There's been a lot of online darts, I guess, but I know you've been able to get to maybe one or two events when the restrictions were lifted a little bit last summer. So what has it been like following the grassroots darts during this time?
Well, I think that when I went to Bradfield last year, that was a COVID secure Open. It was that there were varying levels, much like society, varying levels of or how seriously are we taking these restrictions. So, I played in a mask and got a fair amount of stick for that, perhaps understandably. But there was certainly interest and people just wanting to get back to normality. And I think that if you want it badly enough, you will go and play these events socially distant and in a COVID secure way if you want to do it. But really, a lot of those venues need to be unrestricted, have restrictions lifted. So, for the last 15 months, I think you've seen a lot of players at home that really do want to play and have embraced the virtual side of things. And they're learning how to, do a webcam call and have two devices and play in all the virtual stuff. And of course, we've seen that with, the Bang Average League, which you guys have done a great job with, and the GDL, the advent of that. And I'm very heavily involved in the IDL and with a regional version of that in Chichester. So you've seen a sort of advent of virtual darts. And I think that, and interestingly, I just wonder whether virtual darts is actually here to stay, and it can run in parallel, maybe not run in parallel with the in-person events. And I think that that's one of the positive things to come out of the pandemic for grassroots darts, because it's social darts. It's much more social to play virtually than it is in person in many ways, because you don't say anything to your opponent when you're playing in person, really, because you want to, you might metaphorically batter each other off the board. But in a virtual game, you're sort of complimenting each other all the way through and having a good chat before and after. So it's been difficult, but I think that those that really wanted it and want to play have made the best of it.
Lastly, before we let you go, we should give you a chance to pick out your favourite guests that you've spoken to while you've been representing us and chatting to different players and different people during the show. So what have been your favourite guests and favourite moments with us?
So obviously, meeting yourself at the regional of the World Masters was spoken about. It was nice to spend a day or two with Burton at the 2019 UK Open. And he was a celebrity in that room, Alex. It was fantastic, to see. So I was sort of parading him around at one point, saying, "Yes, this is Burton. Yes, I know him by proxy." Yes, and that was when he doesn't do them anymore, sadly. But that was when he was really on it with his tweets and the spreadsheets, which, by the way, people now copy. And so he really did sort of set the trend on that. So those are two highlights. And I think in terms of interviews, last year, to keep myself busy during the first lockdown, we did the Riley's Lockdown Challenge, which was really good. I enjoyed talking to Louis Williams, who has now gone on to win a card. I remember talking to Chaz Barstow a couple of years ago at before a Q school and getting heckled whilst interviewing him from one of his drunk mates. And but now look at him, now everyone knows who he is and knows how class he is. And I enjoyed as well talking to Jason Heaver, who I interviewed just after he qualified for the UK Open at Riley's last year. Now he is a tour card holder as well. So I always find it quite rewarding to catch these guys just as they are, perhaps when no one, in the national side of things know who they are, but now then win a card, later on. And Martin Lugman's the other one as well, who I spoke to about four years ago. Now he's won a card as well. So it's quite nice to see their developments. And I think that's probably the most rewarding aspect of it, and hope to continue to catch these guys on the way up for the weekly Dartscast for the next 200 episodes.
Good man. Well, we appreciate everything that you've done for us from episode 1 up to 200 and hopefully a little bit further on down the line as well. We appreciate all of that and appreciate your time as well, Matthew, and best wishes for the rest of the year, and hopefully we'll be back playing some darts very soon in a pub.
Absolutely, and well done to Burton and to Hannah as well. Fantastic stuff.
Thanks again to Barry and Matthew for joining us. Now let's get into some Premier League. And for the first time since night 2, Michael van Gerwen ends the night top of the Premier League, that 12th night that we've had, the last one. Have the rest of the field missed the boat in denying him top spot?
I'm going to say no, because Michael van Gerwen was just that good on nights 10, 11, and 12, particularly nights 10 and 12. But he wasn't all that poor against Johnny Clayton. It was more, Clayton, you could say, missed a chance in that match, but I guess if he had won that, he would have been top of the table. So I take that back. Yes, Johnny Clayton missed the boat because Johnny Clayton was that close. If he had played like he normally does against Van Gerwen, which is just out of his skin, he would be top right now. But beyond that, there's really not much anywhere you could say someone missed an opportunity against Van Gerwen. Van Gerwen has just been the best player in the second phase over those 3 nights, and he was pretty good half the time in the first phase and terrible the other half. You're not going to beat him more often than not when he's pretty good, and people did beat him when he was off his game. So I just can't say they've missed a trick other than Clayton, because Van Gerwen deserves to be top right now. Yeah, okay, Jose de Sousa dropped points a few times, and maybe if he had got his Premier League campaign over those first few nights off and running a bit quicker, maybe he could be top right now. Nathan Aspinall and Dimitri Van den Berg have matches where they say they could have done better and they could be top right now. But that would be, you missed an opportunity against someone else. No one really has missed an opportunity against Van Gerwen, Clayton aside. So I'm going to say no. Van Gerwen's top, and based on what we saw last week, deserves to be.
It is an interesting one, and I've got to admit I didn't see much of this latest block of Premier League nights. I did have other things going on, but I was looking back earlier today at some of the performances, some of the results, some of the legs involved in that third block of nights, and it's got to be said as well, Michael van Gerwen, his Premier League averages, they have been up and down, and I'll keep it clean, like Norwich City in the championships of the Premier League. They've just been going up and down during this Premier League, but this latest block, his lowest average was 95. His other two, 109, 107 in between. Those first couple of blocks, though, as you touched on, it has been very hit and miss for him. He's had low 90s averages. One of the games he went into the 80s, 87 average. But it kind of feels like this could be the week. And, okay, it's still very early days. We've still got a lot to play for this year. But we could well be looking back at that week, those 3 nights, that stretch of Premier League games that he played, and he got 3 wins out of 3. And we could be saying that is the week when perhaps he got his mojo back. He got his confidence back. They were the final nights that we're going to see without the fans. We are going to have the fans back for the last bit of the Premier League. But some of his timing, I've got to mention that, because it's that Michael van Gerwen timing. When it is in sync, I don't think there's anyone better. And it's been missing for a lot of the last 12 months, those big shots when your opponent's on a finish, or maybe not even the big shots, maybe the 78s, the 94s like he had against James Wade, and then the higher up shots, the ones where you finish on the bull or you need a treble with your first 2 darts. The game against Dimitri van der Berg, he had a 1-2-6, a 1-2-3. The game against Johnny Clayton, a 1-17, 1-2-4, and it's all well and good getting them shots, but when you're getting them when your opponent's on a 2 dart, or maybe a single to a double, or they're on a double themselves, they just mean that much more. And even the game with Johnny Clayton, that was his worst performance in terms of averages, the 95, and Johnny Clayton, he wasn't as good as he has been. But those 3 legs, the 117, the 124, the 87, proved to be the difference in the end, those combination finishes, which have been lacking a little bit in Michael van Gerwen's game. But is it a missed opportunity? It is a tough one. We have still got those 4 nights to come, and you're going to hear from Wayne Mardle in a few moments as well. We're going to go into the finals night 24 hours after that last league night. So that could play a big factor in who wins this Premier League, is who plays themselves into form during that week and maybe sneaks the 4th spot on the final night. But like I said, this could have been the week for Michael van Gerwen when he's got 3 wins over 3 top players, Dimitri van der Berg, Johnny Clayton, who's had his number a few times recently, James Wade, 110 average himself. He has had to play well, and that timing has had to be there. So we'll see in this final block, but potentially we could be looking back at that week as the missed opportunity for them.
Now, nights 10 through 12, Peter Wright played 3, lost 3, and now finds himself 5 points adrift, in essence 6 with goal differential of the playoffs with 4 nights to go. So probably fair to rule him out of contention, although we've been wrong before that it's not. But would you say the other 7 players are still contenders to make the top 4, make the playoffs?
Yeah, I think that's fair. We said on the last episode that we did that this 3rd week was going to be a big week. You probably couldn't secure your spot in the playoffs, but you could certainly put yourself out of contention. And I think that is what, sadly for Peter Wright, that he's done with the 3 defeats. And I know he mentioned in an interview recently that he's had a bit of trouble with his shoulder, and his wife Jo's due in for an operation, so his mind has been elsewhere a little bit. But his performances, they weren't good enough. 0 points from the week, and he is facing a big battle. 5 points to claw back in 4 nights. It's going to be tough. I mean, the most points he can get now is 17. Is that going to be enough? I don't think it is going to be, but it could potentially push him up a few spots in the table. So with the fans coming back as well, we spoke on the last episode, that's going to be a big incentive for Peter Wright. Maybe not playing for a playoff spot now, but he can push up the table, get a bit more prize money, and get a bit of confidence back going into the next couple of Super Series and the World Match Play. But yeah, back to the question. I think it is down to those 7 players now, and you got to say James Wade tailed off a little bit. Okay, he was unfortunate to average 110 and not get anything out of it, but 2 defeats and a draw from the 3 nights, it's left him with a bit to do. He is still in contention, and he's going to play Nathan Aspinall, Dimitri van der Berg, 2 players that are in that top 4. So he's in with a shout, and we all know James Wade, he has got at any time the ability to pull off a big leg, a big check out, and run through a few legs and get that win and sneak a point, sneak a win. So yeah, I think James Wade in 7th, still in with a shout. Gary Anderson, he's put himself right in contention. I think he lost the first night of that block with a 93 average, comes back the following day, 104 average, gets a win, pushes it up even higher the next night, 107, and he's still got to play Johnny Clayton, Michael van Gerwen, Nathan Aspinall, 3 players above him in the table. So he's well within a shout. And the other one as well, who after the 9 nights wasn't in the playoffs, Jose, he's put himself in contention as well, and he's got a tough run in. It's got to be said. Dimitri, Johnny Clayton, Michael van Gerwen, Nathan Aspinall, probably one of the hardest run-ins there is. But like we've said on the show, this year he's been one of the top players in the game, and he's getting some results now. He picked up 5 points out of a possible 6 in that. He seems to have got to grips with the Premier League now. The crowd's coming back is going to provide a different dimension, but I think he's more than capable of sticking in that top 4. So I think, sadly for Peter Wright, he's out of it, but the other 7 all to play for going into the final week.
Yeah, I'll start with Peter Wright. I agree. I just don't see 17 points being enough to get to the playoffs. So even if he wins out, all he's playing for right now is probably 15,000 in prize money, 10,000 in prize money, because I don't think he can get up to 5th. But he maybe could get up to 6th if he gets 4 wins. And that's an extra 10,000 in prize money. But that's really all he has to play for the last 4 nights. James Wade's a tough one to say whether he is still in. He is 3 points back. Maybe if he gets hot, he can make up that goal differential. It's only, plus 12 for 4th to -1 for him. That seems like a lot, but with over 4 nights, if he plays well enough, that will come back. So he's really just 3 points adrift. And he also is playing the one person behind him in Peter Wright and Gary Anderson, who's just a point above him, which gives him an opportunity for points. But at the other end, those are 2 matches where I think if he's him, he would rather be playing Jose de Sousa. He'd rather be playing Johnny Clayton still, so that he can pull back the people he needs to catch. And he doesn't get that opportunity in 2 of the 4. The other against Nathan Aspel, Dimitri Vandenberg, were both 4 points ahead of him. So James Wade, 19 points, probably gets him into the playoffs. 18 might, depending on goal differential. But he doesn't have it as favorable as it could because of the fact that he's not playing those people that he needs to reel in. So I don't know if he's still in. He has. If he wins out, I do think he gets out, but that might be the only thing. So he's, I'd say, not currently in contention, but can get himself into contention on nights 13 and 14. Gary Anderson's only 2 points adrift, and like James Wade, the goal differential will make up itself if he gets hot. He's definitely still in. And then obviously Johnny Clayton, he's only out on goal differential right now, so you can't say he's not in contention when he's tied for the last spot, and the top 4 are obviously in contention. So I think I'll say there's 6.5 left, because James Wade has half a foot in the race and half a foot out. We need to see what happens on night 13. He has to beat Peter Wright, who's, the bottom of the table. If he doesn't beat Peter Wright, it's pretty much game over for James Wade. If he does, I think he's back in the race. So 6.5 out of the 8 still have a chance.
Plenty of mentions for goal differential as well. Of course, it could come down to away goals, which is legs won against the throw, if you don't know that term. But let's get into our next guest. He is going to be involved in the final week of the Premier League. It is the Sky Sports pundit and commentator, Wayne Mardle.